Hello and welcome to The Broken Sword. Today we are looking at the differences in the character of Sauron between the Lord of the Rings books and the movies.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
Today we come back to our book versus movie comparisons, and this time we are looking at a character as opposed to the battle like we did with Gandalf versus the Witch King, which if you have not seen them, please go and check that out as well. But this time we will start our character dives on the evil side as we look at the main antagonist of the trilogy, the Dark Lord Sauron. And quickly here, before I get into the main bit of the video, I would like to ask you all to either leave a comment of book Sauron or movie Sauron, for whichever version of the character that you prefer. But anyway, let us start with a quick summary of each version of the character before going into a little bit more on the differences between the two, and today we are going to start with the book version. Sauron is one of the Maiar, a semi-angelic immortal spirit. This means that in the earlier years of his existence, he could take on any form that he wished, with very few limitations. However, he lost this ability in the Second Age due to the downfall of Numenor when it was flooded, as we have covered in past videos on both Sauron and Numenor during the Second Age, so I will not go into too much more detail on that for now. But what this did mean though is that by the time of The Lord of the Rings, his beautiful and fair forms were impossible to take for him, and so he hid away, weakened and crippled, almost to the point of defeat, and then he ends up in Mordor. Tolkien says he brooded in the dark until his new form was created, and it was malice made visible. So basically, something that was terrifying. This descent into, well, greater evil, along with the loss of his one ring, took away a large percentage of his focused Maiar power, leading to the loss of a great amount of his abilities. However though, we cannot be sure what his new form definitely looked like. It is said the form he had during the Battle of GALAD at the end of the Second Age was tall and armoured, but he was still killed, or as close to being killed as he could have been by Elendil and GALAD. Now it is thought, when he makes himself known again in the middle of the Third Age, he looked the same, except of course with one less finger than before, all thanks to ISILDUR. This is told to us by the creature GOLLUM, who, while being tortured within the Dark Tower of Barad-dûr, was apparently visited by Sauron, therefore being able to see him. So although it really ends up more down to your imagination, we can be sure that at the very least he was definitely far from fair. Sauron is also described as searching for the ring with an almost cat-like eye, or at least if he is searching for you, as in if you are the ring bearer, this is how it is seen. Sauron's power is also added to by being in possession of a palantir that he has under his complete control. Thus, he was remarkably good at seeing what was going on in the rest of Middle-earth. This is really where the reference to the eye actually comes from, and that is interpreted in a different way by the movies. And reaching this point lends us well to now move on and cover the Peter Jackson adaptation version of The Dark Lord. In the movies, we get a glimpse of the body of Sauron in the prologue of The Fellowship of the Ring, forging the One Ring within Mount Doom and slaying countless soldiers in the War of the Last Alliance. He is dressed head to toe in intimidating armour and is very large in size, standing head and shoulders above the men and elves. After Isildur cuts the ring from his finger, he no longer has a body to speak of. From here, all the way up until the end of the story, Sauron is only seen again as a giant flaming eye that sits at the top of Barad-dûr. Obviously only talking about the Lord of the Rings here, not his appearance as the necromancer in The Hobbit. But anyway, he can communicate through the palantir like it shows him doing with the likes of Saruman, but still only appearing as an eye. Even at the end final battle at the Black Gate, he can only watch on as this great eye, not come down to take on the last remaining hope of the West. I will mention though, for those of you who do not know this, there was a moment where Peter Jackson almost made him appear to fight Aragorn in a physical form, basically the same physical form you see at the beginning in the prologue, and it was even filmed on set. But in the end, when it came to the edit, this was cut and Sauron was replaced with a CG troll that we get in the final cut. So now that we have covered briefly both the book and movie versions of the character, I can be more comfortable that we are at least roughly up to the same point of understanding. So let's take a deeper look into some of the changes and just why they may have been done, and if it was possibly for better or for worse, even though, to be fair, there are not a great deal in the number of changes made to Sauron. The first and the most obvious point to cover is the idea of, does Sauron or does Sauron not have a body? Well, we can confirm 100% that he has a body in the books. In letter number 200 of the Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, he wrote the following. After the battle with GIL-galad and Elendil, Sauron took a long while to rebuild, longer than he had done after the downfall of Númenor. I suppose because each building up used up some of the inherent energy of the spirit, which might be called the will or effective link between the indestructible mind and being and the realization of its imagination. The impossibility of rebuilding after the destruction of the ring is sufficiently clear mythologically in the present book. So in other words showing, although it took longer, he definitely could rebuild in the same way he did before and regain a body. But then when it came to Peter Jackson, he made the exact opposite clear to his audience. Sauron is definitely no more than an eye after his loss of the One Ring. But why was this done? Well, I think one of the main reasons here has to be so people did not question why Sauron did not come down himself at any point. If he was just sitting in his tower the entire time, why not come and influence such important events? Even if he was weakened, he could surely have made a difference by the end. I mean, why not go down fighting rather than sitting in a tower? It may not make sense to the general viewer of the movie who has no prior knowledge of Tolkien's work. So instead, Jackson chose a striking visual of a flaming eye, always awake, always watching instead. And I do think this did help the general understanding for Sauron's power and level of evil without needing much help. But in terms of the book again, a flaming eye is really just a too literal interpretation to the words. The eye is only really a metaphor for Sauron's power and his reach. And this is definitely a change that does cause some controversy within the fans. And there are other changes that are smaller but are at least worth a quick mention. In the movies, Sauron kills GIL-galad, albeit off-screen, and is defeated by Isildur slicing the One Ring off his finger as a last-ditch defensive move. Whereas in the books, Sauron is in fact killed by GIL-galad and Elendil in an epic battle, while he also manages to kill the two of them in the struggle as well, with Isildur only then coming up to his fallen body later and cutting off the finger and taking the One Ring. Although in both cases, Isildur does use his father's broken blade to cut Sauron's finger. And to be honest, these are the only real changes made to the character. By the time we reach the Third Age, Sauron is spending most of his time rebuilding and regaining the strength that he once held. So instead of leading from the front, Sauron instead commands from the back, with or without a body, and that is the case in both the book and the movie versions. It is really just his appearance that changes. He is left more shrouded in mystery in the book, as a looming great shadow of threat. But for obvious reasons, when it comes to a visual medium like a movie, then the audience just really needs to see something a little bit more. I'm not saying that the decision made by Peter Jackson and his team was necessarily a good one or necessarily a bad one. I am just saying I can understand the thought process behind the decisions that were made. And so there we have it, a quick look into just how the character of Sauron was altered from the pages of the book to the screen of the Peter Jackson trilogy. This one is not as extreme as some of the other characters that I hope to dive into in the future, but as a starting point for these character comparisons, and as he is the main bad guy of it all, then I thought he was worth the time to examine. And also, please remember here, leave a comment of either book Sauron or movie Sauron for which version of the character you prefer. But anyway, now that we have concluded that comparison, it is time for my question for you all today, and that is, do you think Sauron could have been represented in a better way than a great fiery eye in the movies? Now let's say for example that you went with the Peter Jackson approach of he doesn't actually have a body as such. How would you have done it instead? Or would you have just given him a body in the movies? Let me know that as well. In fact, just let me know anything of what you would have done with him in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. And now that we've reached the end of the video, I would also like to do the usual reminders of we do not just have this channel but two others going as well, these being the 6th Ranger for Power Rangers content and History of Dragon Ball for Dragon Ball content. Links of course for both those channels will be in the description below if you would like to check them out. And now to finish off, it's time to shout out our patrons. Firstly, our Divine Power team members of Kevin, Abram, Matt, and Glorfindel of Gondolin. You are all awesome people. And a big thanks to our Fire Demon team members of Nashith, Denver Steel, and Gregory. You are all incredible. And as well, I cannot forget the Wizard Staff tier members of John, Andrew, and Pirate747. Every single one of you is a true legend of the Brohirrim. And finally, if you have not already as well, please do all the great stuff. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Doing all these things massively helps us out with that YouTube algorithm, and really it's just great to see the interaction from you all. So all I have left to say is, if you've managed to reach the end of the video with me today, I want to give you a massive thank you, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.